Hello and welcome. Today, we're diving into some really fascinating research that might just flip the script on how we think about rehabilitation, justice, and, well, second chances. And it all kicks off with one very tough question. I mean, think about it. The stakes are just incredibly high, right? For that person who's looking for another shot, for the community they're about to re-enter, and for the justice system as a whole. How on earth do you make that call? Because let's be honest, getting this decision right is absolutely critical, not just for public safety, but for the very idea that rehabilitation is even possible. For a long, long time, the thinking has been pretty straightforward. The best way to know what someone will do tomorrow is to look at what they did yesterday. Seems logical, doesn't it? But what if that's only half the picture? So let's dig into this long-standing, past-focused approach. For decades, it's really been the bedrock of how risk is assessed in the criminal justice system. Okay, so the whole thing is built on what are called static risk factors. And that word, static, that's the key. It means they're set in stone, unchangeable facts from a person's history. They are, by their very nature, stuck in the past. And the main tool for this, kind of the gold standard for a long time, is called the static 99R. It's used all over the globe to come up with a risk score based entirely on those unchangeable details from someone's past. But here's the catch, and the research we're looking at today points it out directly. As the authors put it, a huge limitation is that these factors are static. They can't account for change. So a score based on the past can't tell you a thing about a person's growth, or the effort they put in, or any positive changes they've made. It's a snapshot, not a movie. And right there, that limitation, it creates this massive, crucial puzzle that these old models just can't seem to solve. Get this, study after study has shown that up to half, that's 50% of the people that these tools label as high risk, well, they don't actually reoffend. That is a huge gap in our understanding. So that's the million-dollar question, isn't it? If all their historical static factors are screaming high risk, what's the secret ingredient? What's going on in their present that's leading them to succeed? It has to be something the old tools just aren't looking for. And that puzzle has pushed researchers toward a pretty radical new idea. What if we've been looking in the wrong place? What if, instead of only cataloging risks, we started looking for strengths? And that brings us to this concept of protective factors. Now, these aren't just the absence of bad stuff. They are active, positive things, strengths a person develops, like better coping skills, empathy, or a really solid support system. They're all about the future. And this is a really important difference. Think about it like this. It's not enough to just not hang out with criminal friends. That's avoiding a negative. A protective factor is actively building a positive, like a strong network of supportive people who have your back. One is the absence of a problem, the other is the presence of a solution. So if you're going to measure these positive strengths, you need a new tool, right? And that's where this comes in, the SAPROF-SO. Its entire job, its whole purpose, is to systematically find and measure a person's strengths. Basically, it zones in on three key areas. You've got resilience, self-control and how you cope with stress. Then there's adaptive sexuality, which is about having a healthy identity and regulation. And finally, pro-social connection. That's all about having goals, positive friends, and a sense of purpose. All right, so we've got a showdown. The old way, the static 99R, that's all about past risk. And the new way, the SAPRO-SO, all about present strengths. There's only one real way to know which is better. You've got to put them to the test. And that's exactly what this study did. They took a group of 170 men who, by all the traditional measures, were considered the highest of the high risk. So this wasn't some easy, low-stakes test. This was designed to see if these tools could work under the toughest possible circumstances. So here's the real question. When these guys were released under close supervision, which model would actually predict what happened? Was their past what mattered most? Or were their present strengths the real key to their future? Well, the results came in, and they were, wow. They were incredibly clear, and they really suggest a whole new path forward. So, first up, the old way, the static 99R, the industry standard for decades. As you can see here in this high-risk group, it was a total bust. It could not predict who would have their release revoked. Its predictive value was effectively zero. But then, you look at the new strengths-based tool, the SAPROF-SO, and it's the complete opposite story. It successfully predicted who would succeed on supervised release. Think about that for a second.
The presence of strengths, not the history of risk, was the key indicator.
And this chart, this is where it gets really powerful. For individuals with low or medium scores on the strengths test, the failure rate was over 41%. But for those with high scores, the ones with a critical mass of these protective factors, the rate just plummeted to about 7%. It's like there's a clear tipping point where having enough strengths completely changes the game. So the takeaway from this is a potential paradigm shift. Instead of just trying to contain and manage a person's past risks, the more effective path forward might be to focus on actively building their future strengths. And that leaves us with this final big question to think about. If this is true, if cultivating the positive is a better predictor of success than just cataloging the negative, what does that mean for how we design everything? Our rehabilitation programs, our justice system, our approach to public safety? What could change if we started measuring people not just by the worst thing they've ever done, but by the strengths they have fought so hard to build?